As an athlete, you've heard it all your life. Think of others, put other people first, put the team first. But what if I told you that the best athletes in the world, the most elite, are actually doing the opposite? There's actually a selfishness to them that allows them to be more selfless for the team. They're able to grow themselves first so they can then contribute. See, in today's episode, we're going to break down the exact philosophy that you need to get to the next level and why getting selfish to be selfless or more selfish is probably the best move for your career. So today's topic is a really big one because I think a lot of people need to realize that you've been doing this whole athlete thing wrong. I wouldn't say everything, but a decent amount of it, especially when it comes down to this topic that we're covering today. Because so many times we're taught, every athlete has to be the most selfless given person that you've ever seen, and it's all about the team first. And yes, that's important. But, what we're going to be diving into here today is actually why you should be doing the opposite first. And we're not saying that, to start with a disclaimer for anybody who's tuned in and is a little triggered by the title of this podcast, but we're not talking about, becoming this jerk who only cares about themselves. It's actually more of a philosophy that you need to have if you're going to do this athlete thing at the highest level possible.
Yeah.
Right?
And well, like you said, it's not that, people have been doing it wrong per se. It's just lack of knowledge. Right. It's you're trying things. It could be that you're trying things for the first time or that you've never had this experience before. And if you're feeling lost with it, this is the episode for you.
Well, and not only if you're feeling lost, but I think you hit a good point. I was thinking in my head the whole time, being taught the wrong way. Right. And I think that's a really big thing with athletes that, I think the good intention is there to help athletes and say, well, you should be thinking about your team first. Yes.
Yeah.
But it goes to the, understanding or saying that the one who always gives is the one who's always poor.
Good. Yeah.
Right? And giving it is rewarding, but you need to give the right way if you're going to make sure that you're going to be helping and getting to the next level.
Well, yeah. Well, I think that's the major difference between I guess you could say the house league version to the high performing version. Mm-hmm. House league version, you're always taught, especially if you're playing with friends or if you're playing with, you starting out, even the coaches that you have, it's a completely different environment. You're taught a certain way. And then unfortunately, yes, there is a point where you do need to bring those things into a team and you have to do things for the team and stuff like that. But it's to a certain point. If you're not good enough to be able to contribute your absolute best to that, you're not serving the team.
Yeah, and I think this too it's not just for athletes, this episode. It's for any coach who's trying to also push their team to the next level or bring their team to the next level. And this whole selfishness. So let's dive into the philosophy because we speak about it a lot. What this selfishness means, or our saying here is get selfish to be selfless, right? Meaning focus on yourself so that you can better serve others. If you want to look at it in a nicer way, you can look at it as you got to grow before you can contribute. And that's the whole purpose of this. That is the philosophy behind it. I want you to think of something for a sec. How many times do people tell athletes you need to put the team first?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Always.
I've seen that as an athlete. You've seen that as an athlete. I've seen it as a coach. You've seen it as a coach. Many different sports, playing our own. And I'm going to use a very simple scenario. Okay. And it has zero relevance to the elite competitive community, however, and competing athletes, but I'm going to show you how basic, even at a basic level, this rule matters, okay? For anybody that plays, who's tuning in, let's call it beer league or men's league or women's league sports, post-career, like we do sometimes. The most frustrating thing was showing up to games, seeing the guys, because we play in a men's league, or used to, seeing the guys who weren't coming to be their absolute best. And they were doing everything for the team. They were helping the team. They were doing their best for the team. But the reality was this. I don't know about you. Maybe it's my competitive nature. I got more frustrated by the guys who came on the field in men's league soccer and couldn't properly contribute, but were trying to, than those who came on the field, contributed as best as they could, because they were actually in some way, shape, or form prepared. Maybe they went to the gym. Maybe they took just 10 minutes to warm up even. Even though they stayed on longer sometimes and annoyed me, I would have much rather preferred those guys than the ones that came on and didn't have any kind of sense of ability to contribute because they didn't work on themselves at all.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's a very high level example of that. But my point being, if you take this mentality and you bring it to the sports world, now the elite sports world, with the individuals that we work with, one of the most damaging myths I think I've ever seen when it comes to sports is you got to put the team first. Truly putting the team first with this mentality means you need to work on yourself first so you have skills that you can bring to the table and then you contribute. This notion of everything you do, sacrifice for the team, that cannot happen until you build the skills.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And even like there will always be a limitation to those skills for each individual athlete. Like some guys, like you said, some guys are putting their work in prior to the game, like not even men's league, but just like at a professional level altogether. Some guys put in the work. Other guys just show up to the field or to the game itself and they try to perform.
Yeah.
Right. It's different for every player, but if you give yourself that opportunity, instead of really trying to work hard to put in a shift on the field, because at the end of the day, I think that's what all teams are looking for, is if you put in a shift. But if you're doing it in a way that can legitimately contribute in preparing beforehand, you have a better opportunity to do more.
But I'm going to see, this is where I have a bit of a problem with it. And look, at the root of this all, I understand why this is the notion being pushed on younger athletes, especially when you get to the pro level. But we're going to talk about the reality of high performance environments in a sec. Hey, Matt Calderoni here. Really quick break from the podcast. Nice little ask. We give away so much free content to you on a weekly basis, and we give you all the secrets that you need in order to be successful. All we ask is that you leave us a like, a follow, a comment, a subscribe, however you want to look at it, a rating, especially on the podcast channels. It helps us grow this. We don't do any promotions for this other than our organic marketing, and you can definitely help anybody that needs us. Share it with them, and please keep tuning in, keep listening, because we got some heat for you today. But the idea is being you want to create a very selfless individual. Mm-hmm. Okay. But just having a selfless individual will not get you the results you're looking for from that person. Because you will create a yes person, right? Mm-hmm. Someone who doesn't have any values, which is oftentimes what athletes get, cut for when they don't have the values they abide by, the skills they need to have, and so on. They often get cut for that. And then on top of it, what you're teaching, if you're a parent tuning in or you're a coach tuning in that works with young players, you're teaching them the unimportance of working on themselves and instead just getting into this groupthink mentality on things.
The enough to get by.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's not what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. We are looking to help children become the best they can possibly be. We are looking to help athletes become the best they can possibly be. You need to prioritize yourself first, and success leaves clues, right? I think of all the greatest athletes who have ever done it. Think of the athletes that just were even able to make it. They say no to a lot of things. Yes to this very, very specific things, and they go do those things over and over again. Mm-hmm. And when I think of these top individuals, you want to look at icons. They're the most public and easy ones to study because they share their rituals and routines and all this stuff. You think of Michael Jordan, 150 shots a day, specifically focused on certain things in practice, talks about how he detached from the team results and instead focused on his job. Like, looking at it too, how in the off season, he would have a couple months where he went out and had some fun. And then the month before he got back, he told no to everybody and just focused on his craft. That's the selfishness we're talking about. And then you look at a guy like that, it's like, well, why did he succeed so much? Well, it's funny because Michael Jordan was able to contribute on a nightly basis because of how hard he worked on himself. Mm-hmm. And it all starts from the philosophy of get selfish to be selfless, or grow so you can contribute. But that's the only way to do it. Like Larry Markkinen, right? One of the biggest transformations I witnessed that man make as we've been working together has been this mentality that he took from, and he says it all the time. It used to be all about the team, but the moment, Matt, that I started having better leadership ability, better impact on the team, better abilities in the game, was when I said, screw everything else, put me first, work on me first, and then my team will benefit from me. And if you look at a lot of these players and you look at how this works, all teams are doing is benefiting from the players that they have on their roster.
And it's funny. I had a conversation with a with an athlete this week, and so he was doing all the extra work. He was doing it on his own. And it's funny because maybe I'm jumping ahead, but it works in both ways. You're working on yourself to then bring your skills to better the team.
Of course.
Right? But then he was on the ice alone. One day he was doing his extra work, and the coach pulled him into his office afterwards and actually got mad at him because he was the only one on the ice and expected him to bring other people with him.
Nope.
Isn't that...
Sorry. No, like this is what I'm talking about, though. Like, I'm sorry. Okay, so let's look at the situation for a sec.
Isn't that interesting, though?
It's crazy because the thing is, though, when you have this kind of crap that goes on, and like that's what I mean by doing it for the team. Look, you can have 20 guys or gals who do it for the team who are at 5% of their full potential and optimization, or you can have 20 individuals who you let do what they need to do in order to optimize themselves at least to 50%. And you can have those 20 people get there instead. Like, I understand the notion of wanting to get everybody back on together with you or whatever. However, the biggest problem with that is then you look at it and you think, well, what if he was out there doing what he needed to do specifically because he didn't have time to do it during practice, which I know with our protocol that we have, that's what it is. And now you have a player who would have been half at his potential. And here's how this funny, cycle works then. Everybody who tells the athlete to be more selfless are the ones that then end up getting them in trouble or getting pissed at them after because they're not hitting their potential in performance. And you look at this and it's like, well, isn't that an interesting feedback loop? Because now you have these individuals you're telling, take everybody with you. Don't worry about you. You got to make it all about the team. And then all of a sudden, these people can't do what they need to do to better themselves. And now you have the same individuals that told them, bring everybody with you, who are now getting upset with them saying, you got to be better.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I've been trying to do what I need to do to get better. That's the problem I have with this.
It's a crazy...
It's a cycle. And it's a great way to get into the second point. The reality of high performance environments. See, this is what, and I don't care how young you are as an athlete, if you're tuning into this, a parent who's tuning in, or a coach. This has unfortunately now become the norm, and anything that's different from it is the exception. Okay? Because I see this with kids young, and so do you. We see it right down to competitive top tier sports levels at any sport, even down to the young kids. This is how it's designed. Every environment's designed for one thing. You know what it is in sports? High performance, anything. You know what it is? To get results for the organization. Plain and simple, black and white, no other way about it. When you come into a team, you are getting picked on that for that team based on the fact that this is team's goals. You're a player. I think you can fit the mold to help us reach those goals. You are brought into a team to help them get results.
It's very interesting with that. And I think as like the public, we get trained into the individual brands of players on teams. And you get stuck to the individual, and we forget that the team, like whether because we're in Toronto, the Leafs, or another team that I see do this very well, Juventus. They have no problem putting the crest first. Real Madrid, they have no problem putting the crest first before individual players on the team. Teams, Toronto, for example, everyone has this love-hate relationship with certain players on the team. Do we get rid of them? Do we not get rid of them? But at the end of the day, and this is where my team, I like AS Roma. This is where a lot of the debate comes from. Okay, these players have given everything for the last 3 or 4 years. Can they carry the team any further? And that's where...
Sorry, so are you arguing it's better to do that?
No, I'm saying we have to see it from a team's perspective. I'm saying as a public, we romanticize the individual player.
Yeah.
Whereas
and what's fair
in the team, it has to be the team first.
Yep.
It doesn't matter the stature of the player. It doesn't matter this, doesn't matter that. To a certain extent, if you're a smaller team and you need people to come in, yeah, okay, you need eyes. But if it's a true high performing environment, it has to be
They're designed for results.
It's designed for results.
It doesn't matter if it's business or sports. If you're 10 years old, and I know there's a lot of people tuning in saying, "Well, my kid's team is designed for development." Look, if that truly, and I will challenge you to look through the wool sometimes and the smoke pulled over you or blown by you. If that is absolutely true, and this environment is developed to cultivate development. Mm-hmm. That is the exception. That's not the norm.
Yeah.
That's the reality. And I'm not trying to be hard about it. It's just, this is how it's developed. Now, as you get older, it's less about the player. Mm-hmm. Even the NCAA level, like there are, on a one hand, I can count it, a fantastic amount of coaches that really prioritize this at the NCAA level. But even when you get there, I don't care what anybody says. You got to understand the job you're signing up for. You got to understand what animal you're dealing with. If you go into the highest competitive tier of sports, and here's the thing, I actually don't think that that's the wrong approach to take to these environments.
No,
it's the right approach.
At the end of the day, it is high level.
It's high level.
It's high level sports.
Now, mind you, I'm saying this also though with the kids. Like I think with the kids, you got to have a little bit better of an understanding. I actually think personally, disclaimer here, in North America, I think we do a poor job at developing young athletes. I think Europe, they have found a lot of the key to do it there, and I agree more with that system than I do here. However, I will also say it is what it is. We can't do anything about that. So there's no point to complain with it. What I'm saying, though, is you need to know the animal you're dealing with when you go into it. Because I know from building our company, I know for a fact the culture is divided around or built around, yes, we want everybody to have a voice and be safe and feel heard. However, at the end of the day, the reason we've created a safe culture is because we're driving results, mm-hmm. right? So coming back to my philosophy on this, the reason that athletes need to get selfish to be selfless, you were recruited or brought into a team because they specifically saw you to do a job. Mm-hmm. So they're not asking you to come in here and focus on the team's goals. That might be the end product as a byproduct, but they're not asking you to come in here and worry about any of that. They are asking you to come into this team and do your job to the best of your ability. And your job is to make sure you are ready to answer that bell with your job.
And you know what? Like on paper, when you are brought in, mm-hmm. on paper, you are selected because based off of what you're currently doing.
Yep.
You will thrive in that environment.
Yep.
You're
scouted.
You're a solid part of the team.
Yeah.
You can contribute the way that you are. It's just when you get there, it's kind of taking the foot off the gas and trying to do so many other different things.
See, that's the thing. Because oftentimes you're right to an extent. At least I agree, I should say, with an extent. You're right in however you want to be. But if you think of how most players get to these teams, mm-hmm. they go from being a big fish in a small pond to a big fish in a big pond. Mm-hmm. So what do most players do when they get there? They say, well, it worked down there, but it's a different game here. And what do parents start to say? It's a new level. And what do coaches say? It's a higher level now. Look, if you got picked for that team based on how you were here, keep doing it there.
No, that's what I mean.
Absolutely.
Like you were chosen on paper to fit this puzzle piece.
But my point is where I think players get it wrong is immediately they shift from be the best version of me to now I've got to be good.
So many more things.
Yeah. And like, it's like with Lowry, right? It's like the reason everything shifted was because it was kind of a conversation like this that made it click, where it's like, listen, pal, you're not selected to be a team player. You might have that might come out with how you play. You're selected to hit your shots and you're selected to lead the team offensively.
Yeah.
You need to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, and see, I fall into this trap all the time, mm-hmm. right? Where a lot of the time it's like when we have, sometime, at least I used to, when we first got into the business, it's like, oh wow, another bigger athlete's coming to us. Now I gotta tailor and adapt everything. It's like, no. They came to you because the results you got with them.
Yeah.
So they're coming to you for those results.
It's kind of like, so I have this conversation with some players, especially when they're going through their draft year. Mm-hmm. And I think I've said this before on the podcast. Maybe I'm wrong about this. Correct me if I'm wrong. But you're a certain style of player. Mm-hmm. As much as you are unique, you're in a certain category, you have a certain style of play, you're in a certain position. There's 1,000 other players like you.
Yep.
If you want to be noticed or picked at the next level or this or that or whatever the case may be, but you also have to raise your name on that list of specific category. And the thought process is this. you always hear all these teams, they're building teams around individuals, right? I have this player coming onto my team, I can build around him based off of the traits that person has or the traits that they don't have. Because if I know that I have one player that can do this trait, now I need someone else that can do this one. Now I need someone else that can do this one. It's a matter of, like you said, being selfish to a point where you're selfless. And if you're trying to get to that next level, it's, again, like we just said, you're picked for a reason.
Two things. When we say selfish to be selfless, I want to be very clear again. We're saying work harder on yourself than you do the job.
Yeah.
Right? And if you work harder on yourself and you optimize what you do, I'm not saying you got to hog the ball or the puck or whatever. I'm saying put yourself first to work on the things you're good at, so that way you can go in the game and be the best playmaker if that's what your role is, or the best scorer, or the best defender, or the best goalie, insert whatever it is. The other thing I'll challenge you on is this, to what you're saying. You just proved the point. Whenever we work with athletes that we see who lose it in their draft year, why is it?
Because they try to do so much. They're too focused on it.
They're too focused on trying to make the scouts happy.
Yeah. Trying to do everything.
Bingo. And the mentality should be instead, they are coming to watch me. Do my thing, play my way.
Yeah. You're the main attraction. Like what you currently are doing is the main attraction.
So stick to it.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean by being selfish to be selfless, because then that, like, let's talk about how this manifests out into, or plays out into the high performance environment. Then they identify player A and they say they're a good fit to fit into my team because this is the environment I need, or this is the result I need, and the environment we've created. They call head coach, I've found this player playing on this team, doing this thing in this region, in this. Remember that role you needed to have filled? It's like a scouting department, right? Or in a recruitment agency in business, it's the same as a scouting department. Remember that role you needed filled of a specific playmaker who has speed, has talent, and has vision? I found one. Oh, okay, where are they from? They're from this team. Great. We're going to put them high on our draft list or her on our recruitment list or whatever. Great. Okay, cool. Boom, hangs up. Now here's the key. You go do that for one game and you get too selfless and you start trying to game it now because you know the team has interest in you, you're going to get nailed. Here's why. Because once you put that display on the ice, field, court, whatever, you're now expected to do that. And the one thing that gets you to the next level and gets you going to that team and in that environment, your consistency. Mm-hmm. It's nothing else. It's not exceeding what you did. It's not scoring more goals. It's not passing more.
Yeah.
It's consistency in what you do.
Yeah. They want to
show them
specific return on investment.
Right. Show them you're real.
Yeah.
That's the point. This is why, like, our mission here, for anybody tuning in, our mission here is to help people, empower people to reach their full potential in life. Okay? If you're an athlete and you're trying to be selfless, I'm telling you, that's the right idea, but you need to change your philosophy on it. You need to have something to give if you want to really contribute to a team. And the only way to give is to build first.
Yeah. Selfless is it's half.
It's part of the equation. Yeah. So when you get into these environments, here's how you really deal with it and how you work with it. We do something here that we say, you got to live in your own world, right? And when we talk about living in your own world, this was actually something I was saying to Chris this morning. This past week, we had an idea that we want to do a breakdown, a case study coming up in the next couple of weeks of Michael Jordan's mental prep. So check it out on our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, we have a really cool new how to build confidence series for athletes that's out, how-to videos, all that. Check it out on our YouTube channel. It's another playlist, another series. But the one that we started looking at was Michael Jordan and his mental prep. And I was saying to Chris, it's like, as I was going down this rabbit hole of understanding how Michael Jordan really did his preparation, there was a really rare interview that I found that I saved, and it was an awesome one. It was like 1 minute and 10 seconds. And what he said was this, and it was very enlightening to hear this, and it really painted the narrative on this selfish to be selfless thing. Like, if you think of Michael Jordan, I know a lot of people think he was a jerk, he was an asshole, however you want to call it, competitor, whatever label you want to give him. The man got results. The man knew how to thrive in a high performance environment. You don't have to be that way. I'm telling you right now, I say that to 99.9% of our players. You don't need to take that approach. Look at Steph Curry, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. However, he is selfish to be selfless as well. Look at him. He shoots. He works on himself first. Then because of that, the team benefits, and they benefit from Steph Curry, right? Anyways, with Michael Jordan, he's talking about it, and then he goes, I'm completely detached from my results. When it comes to game time, I'm solely focused on my athletic skills. And it's like, crap, that means a lot. And then he goes on to continue and talk about how he goes, and when I'm done playing my game, all I do then is go to work on those 3 skills. And I prioritize making sure I feel good in those 3 skills. That might mean some days I need to do extra work. That might mean some days I have to say no to the guys that want help in their extra practices so I can do mine first. That might mean I need to get in earlier. That might mean I have to go to bed earlier. Point being though, selfish to be selfless. That man had a level of impact that literally shook and set a standard, not just for basketball, but the entire sports world. Right? And if you're talking about being an individual who knows how to get what they want and knows how to truly serve their team, you need to get selfish to be selfless.
Yep.
I can't call to it anymore. It's like the vision comes to life and everybody benefits because of it. That's how this works. So, so many times when we see athletes that get to the reverse, which is, I got to be selfless first, then I'll take care of myself. We're not saying, again, you got to be a selfish jerk. We're saying you need to understand how this really fundamentally works. High performance environments designed to get results. If you do not deliver, right, they're going to promote those who do their job really well and squeeze out those who don't. That's why you see a lot of players who are, quote, highly touted. And the moment that they get there, they can't deliver because they get way too focused on the other things instead of living in their own world. And living in your own world means you prioritize what you need to do first to be the best version of yourself. And that is how these teams benefit from you and how you keep going to the next level, right? Thank you. I'm done my TED talk. My point being though, it's how this all comes back into the feedback mechanisms.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a jerk for that. You got to know how it works.
Yeah. And it's just like you said, it's living in your own world. It's great that you got to that team, but what are you doing to consistently maintain and just not maintain, but also innovate what you're...
Yeah, you innovate on your strengths.
Yeah.
You innovate on what got you there. So there's one key term that we want to say before we let this kind of tailor out this episode, and this is the key to it. It's something called skill mastery, okay? And mastery means when you can perform a skill without even having to think about it. And here's the thing I'm going to call BS, and maybe have some banter for this, but Chris, like when sports psychologists, mental coaches, flavor of the day life coaches, influencers start to talk about flow state and the zone, and they make it seem like it's this eureka, karma, enlightening moment. The reality is they're talking about people who mastered a skill. And the problem I have with this is that I don't think they have a full understanding a lot of times of what mastery is. And I don't think they have a full understanding of the depth of mastery, because let's talk about it. So athletes, there's 3 levels that you can fall into to master something. Okay. First level is called cognitive mastery. And we know that cognitive mastery is when you know what you need to do. So when Chris was talking about earlier, you leave that level you were at before and get to the new one. Most athletes think knowing what they did before was enough. Right. And this is where the trick comes in. So what do? You start doing what you used to do in your old practices. You do them in your new practice and you say, well, that's good enough. I'm done.
And what's normally the measurement? Are you doing it at a higher intensity or speed of game or whatever it is?
Pretty much. But usually, to be frank with you, usually if you literally just carry over what you were doing before, you can get away with it. Okay. So cognitive mastery is when you know what you need to do. Okay, athletes hang out at that level. Then there's level 2. It's called emotional mastery. Emotional mastery is when you know what you need to do and you practice it with intensity. Now, this is where good to great athletes hang out at. Good athletes know what they need to do, work hard on it during practice, and they go home. Great athletes know what they need to do, work hard on it during practice, and then spend an extra 15 to 30 minutes after their practice is done to work on the specific things they need to do in order to get better. They do it sometimes. That's what makes them great, and it yields pretty good results. Awesome. That doesn't get you into the zone, though. And if you're an athlete who's been struggling to get into the zone, it's probably because you're caught at this level 2 of mastery. You need the 3rd level. Level 3 of mastery is where the iconic athletes hang, and it's called physical mastery. And this is what Michael Jordan was saying in his clip. I know the 3 things I need to do. Cognitive mastery. I work on it hard during practice. Emotional mastery. I then put in the repetitions as much as I possibly need until it becomes automatic. That's physical mastery. It's when you keep putting in the reps then over and over and over again. And we always say it's purpose, or knowing what you need to do, times intensity, or how hard you have to go, times repetition. The thing that gets the iconic athletes to that status of not thinking when they play, and why so few athletes can get into the zone, is because athletes are not doing enough repetitions.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking just physically. You need to physically practice after a practice for 15 to 30 minutes. I'm talking mental. Think of Michael Jordan for a sec. Think of any great athlete. They study the game.
Mm-hmm.
They study the game. So what does that mean? That means with all that rep and all that film study and all that knowing and all that focus and all that practice, it is natural that they can be better.
Well, you know, I was having a conversation again with a couple guys this week of how, because it's break down the week, right? You have day one, you complete your stuff, you're good. Day two, you complete your stuff. Because on game day, you kind of break it down into segments where if you're feeling prepared from the work that you did during the week, that's one aspect of it, right? The second part is and we go through this with them, any limiting beliefs that they have about their stuff themselves. Mm-hmm. That's the second part. And the third part is the physical side, right? You know, do you have the actual endurance to complete that skill over and over again? It's kind of segmenting it down. If you're fully prepared throughout the week, you have that. Normally you have the physical side too, if you're getting your recovery and all that stuff. Then the last part is those limiting beliefs on game day. Mm-hmm. If there are any, obviously we have the tools to remove them with the guys that we work with. But if you don't do all three of those things, like you were saying, it's very difficult to even come, like you're kidding yourself if you think you're going to get into the zone on game day or anything for that matter. And
you're kidding yourself if you think it's just a matter of breathing, visualizing, and then execute. It's not.
It's massive,
knowing you're prepared.
It's a combination of
doing the work, man.
Things. Yeah.
Like I'll tell you a great example. There is a basketball player we work with in one league. I won't say where. Knew what he needed to do. Purposeful as heck. Repetition, great. Problem, fell flat on game day because he didn't practice hard enough. That's what I mean is why you need all three of these things, right? And it's like when you do this and you look at it and you understand it and you're doing what you need to do and you're focused on what you need to focus on and you're practicing continuously, you're good. But here's the key to mastery. Mastery doesn't mean that you have to sit there all day and do things 50 million times until you're blue in the face and you're sick of it. That's not mastery. That's called overworking and burning out. Mastery, the interesting thing is when you look deep into what mastery is and you look at the research, these individuals have start and stop times that they intensely attack the work. And maybe this is where you're missing it. Because what people don't realize is they think, oh my God, I got to obsess over my game 24/7, 365. No, Michael Jordan was on the golf course having a cigar more than he was actually physically just thinking about basketball. During the season, a bit different. But point being, you need downtime. Mm-hmm. So whenever we say it, it's like, well, there's that really good book, Atomic Habits, breaks the myth of the 10,000 hour rule. Mm-hmm. So the 10,000 hour rule, for anybody that doesn't know, it says if you put 10,000 hours worth of work into something, you will master that skill and it becomes automatic. It becomes part of you. He argued it and found the science behind it, and I believe it because I've seen it and looked into it myself. It's not the 10,000 hours. It's the amount of repetitions you put in that override old habits. So when you think of mastery, you need to think of yourself as training the habits you need for when you play. Mm-hmm. So if you shoot, for example, like our basketball player, if you shoot like crap at a low intensity, but you shoot the right way, you shoot meaning like you have the right technique, it's not going to work in a game.
Right.
If you practice though, like you have three players on you with that intensity shooting a three ball, you're going to be ready. Mm-hmm. Right? So looking at this, it's the repetition that comes in. So here's really what it takes. You need to, you all probably have an hour's worth of team practice. So you can't avoid that. You got to go to practice and you got to work hard there. You got to work with intensity like it's a game. Then after that practice, you need to spend anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes specifically working on a couple skills that you need to master for the month. Pick one or two max, go work on them. Okay, so now we're looking, let's say on the high end. This is the high end for anybody tuning. This is a high end. I'm not lowballing it. High end, that's an extra 30 minutes. So we're at an hour and a half now, right? You then need to spend 10 minutes a day visualizing, hour and 40. You then need to spend 10 minutes a day watching your film, Hour 50, you need to spend 10 minutes in the morning just getting your mind right. 2 hours. If you told me it took me 2 hours a day where you're already at practice for an hour and a half of that and 30 minutes worth of your own true free time to master something and be one of the best in your position on your team, and you can't do that, you're not committed.
Yeah. And
it's 2 hours.
And what that allows you to do, like, I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but how simple those actions are.
Very simple habits.
You can cut out all the other shit that you're doing that is not working for you.
Because so many times, how many times do we see too? And it's not, I'm not trying to crap on parents or coaches in this, but the reality is like a lot of times parents and coaches don't know what to do to get the player over that next hump. So what they end up doing is just stacking more work.
Yeah, and it doesn't come down to more work.
It's not more work. It's precise work. Like what's the saying? You could run in one direction looking for the sunset when really it's in the opposite one, right? Where is it? Sunset's where again?
In the east?
Yeah.
Or sorry, the west?
The west, right? So you can run to the west looking for a sunrise when it sets in the east. It's the same thing, meaning that you can be this isn't about work. Like that's the thing that I think a lot of times, social media influencers and people that take like snippets of something Kobe Bryant says and then posts it and they're like, "Oh, look, Kobe said all he did was work." That's so out of context. Like it's specific and intense work. It's not just work. You can't just work on thin air and think that it's going to turn in. You can't just work on 10 different skills and hope that they show up in performance. You need specificity, right? Like it's like this, the EuroLeague player I just told you. He needed specifically to work on his shot. Specifically, this shot in this scenario with this kind of pressure on me. You can do that. But you can't just go to work and just, I'm going to try and train everything generally. You said this to me when we were younger, and it's still held true today, and we use this with a lot of athletes. When you work on one thing, it seems like a lot of other things take care of itself.
Always. Because normally that one thing that you're working on is like your biggest, not fear, but your biggest like insecurity.
Absolutely.
And then once you overcome that one insecurity,
everything else
it's like I can try a bunch of different other things.
Yep. Now there's one trap we got to talk about before we wrap this up, and it's called the know-all trap. We discussed this past week. Lots of athletes are caught at level 1 of mastery, which is knowing what they need to do. And sometimes they hover at level 2 and between 1 and 2, where they know what they need to do and they practice hard sometimes. If you're an athlete that thinks knowing is just enough, you're wrong. Because how many people do we know that know what they need to do but don't do what they know they need to do, right? As tongue-twisting as it is. So the key to this is not knowing. I've seen a lot of smart people not succeed. The key to this is not just working hard. I've seen a lot of hard workers not succeed. The key is understanding exactly what you need to do, putting a lot of intense repetition into it, and then having that cutoff period, like we said, to do it repetitively. And if you do it over and over again with the right repetition, with the amount of repetition for the right time, with the right intensity and the right purpose or specificity, you will succeed. This is a call to any athlete who's missing that, because I feel like they miss this part of it. And oftentimes, coming back to the original topic, it's because you're way too selfless thinking about everybody else, and you're not prioritizing the things that make you good at your job, which is the one thing you are brought into your team to do. That I want to keep it very simple. Teams are designed to win. Players are brought in to fulfill a role. That's I'm not trying to reduce down what this is, and you can be very good at that role. But the reality is that's how this is.
Yeah. And I would say if you're in that situation, you're feeling very overwhelmed with your training, I would look to see, are you doing
the right stuff?
Are you doing the right stuff? Is it? Oh. And you know what? It might come to a point where it's like, yeah, I'm feeling overwhelmed, but I am doing the right stuff. It's like, you're probably feeling overwhelmed because you're questioning it.
Can I challenge you?
No, go ahead.
When someone's feeling overwhelmed, I actually think it's because there's so many other things they've said yes to in other areas of their life that they can't do the most important things.
Sure.
Right? Like, I can't tell you the amount of, well, you see it, college athletes we have, even pros, even younger guys, gals. They don't prioritize what has to get done. Things drag on, right? Which should only take 2 hours a day, drags on to being 4. Because I'm going to do my mental reps this time and watch my film that time. We're talking 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then an hour and 30 at practice, which you're already there for.
Yeah. No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it gives you an opportunity to take a look at that.
Those who think they're overwhelmed, I challenge you to say, are you actually time managed? Because I don't think a lot of people are. Yeah. I think a lot of people lack time management on multiple things. And it's like, that's a whole other topic we'll dive into, but you need to understand this is getting selfish to be selfless. Say no to things that don't serve you. Put your skill building first. That way you can be the best for your team. There's going to be some nights you can't go out with the team. There's going to be some. That's okay. I'm not saying you become a hermit, but I'm saying that you have to understand what your limits are. So to recap this all, here's what you got to understand. Number one, your environment is designed to make the team win, not you. You are the one that's responsible for getting yourself into the best position possible to do your job well. You do that with 2 hours a day. You need to make sure you're going to practice and working hard for that hour with the team. Maybe it's a bit longer. You need to spend 15 to 30 minutes after practice specifically mastering skills at a specific intensity. Then you need to make sure that you're given 10 minutes a day to visualize. You're doing 10 minutes a day to study film, and you're doing 10 minutes a day to make sure that you're getting your mind in the right place. That's an hour 30 total. Not a long time. If you do this and you master these skills, you will not fall victim to number one or to level one of mastery, which is cognitive mastery, where you know what you need to do, but you don't go do it. Okay. So with that being said, for anybody that wants to work with us one-on-one, there's links down below. You can apply. It's a first come, first serve basis for our one-on-one coaching program. If you got value from this podcast, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell if you're tuning in from YouTube. It helps us grow. Leave a comment, leave a review if you're tuning in from anywhere like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And of course, check out our YouTube series on our How to Build Confidence series for athletes. We got a lot of cool stuff in there. We give away all the secrets, all the frameworks you need. There was a really good one I think we did, especially on the blueprint of how to build confidence for athletes. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. And of course, stay in it. We'll see you in the next one. Now, if you like this episode and want more of these deep dives like we go into on our podcast, check it out here. And if you want some more short form, to the point, direct trainings that are about 10 to 15 minutes long, check it out here where we have playlists full of different topics on how you can build your resilience.